Before this episode begins, we want to give you a trigger warning. We want you to know that the content of this episode speaks to pregnancy loss and miscarriages and/or a viable pregnancy. We understand this content may be triggering to some of you, and you may wish to save this episode for another day. Remember, your emotions are valid, and we encourage you to take care of yourself and reach out to reliable resources for support when you need them. Every situation is unique and complex on its own.
It makes me think too that this community is full, as you just said, of the strength of people. It is unbelievable. And it's also the people that don't want to be strong. To your point from before, it's like, shut up, I don't want to be strong, but you have to. I don't know from where we pick it up, but it's that will and the hope and the belief. If anyone is listening to this and they either don't feel strong or they're just tired of being strong, we see you. We know. It's just amazing what people go through.
From what I see, I think a lot of people tell me I'm too afraid, I'm not strong. And I think everybody is strong, right? Everybody has a strength within them. Hi, superhumans. I'm Dr. Mavis Garcia.
And I'm Dr. Wise.
We're two of the physician leaders at My Fertility Center, otherwise known as our baby, MFC.
As fertility specialists, we've witnessed firsthand the challenges, triumphs, and the myriad of emotions that come with trying to conceive. Whether you're just starting to think about having a baby, actively trying, or facing challenges along the way, My Fertility Podcast will be your go-to resource for honest conversations and a supportive community.
So grab a cup of coffee or tea and settle in, and let's demystify the world of fertility together. On today's episode of My Fertility Podcast, we are joined by Bianca, who shares her 8-year fertility journey before having her son through IVF about 3 years ago. Bianca also shares a story on Instagram. Connect with her at myfertilityjourney.ca, as well as listen to My Fertility Journey Podcast, where she hosts other infertility warriors and experts who share their knowledge on this topic. Thank you so much, Bianca, for joining us today. We are so delighted to have you here. I know that you've got lots to share with the fertility community, so we can't wait to hear all that you have to say.
Thank you. Thank you both for having me. I'm very excited to be here to chat with you both and to share my story.
That is a fantastic segue. Again, thanks so much for joining us. Please tell us about your fertility journey. When did it start? What were the steps? And how did you come to be sitting here with us at this point?
Absolutely. I've done this many times, and every time I do it, I find like a different way to share and trying to be also clear and concise. So hopefully you're going to get a good, clear version of it because it was a very long story and a long journey. Spoiler alert, I do have a little boy, an IVF son. So that is the happy ending to my fertility treatment story. But I did change a lot as a person. So I do like to stress that a lot for when I do share. It started back in, I'm going to say 2013. It's all a little bit blurry, but I think that's when we decided between 2012, 2013 that we would stop birth control. And as most people that have a very simple kind of reproductive health knowledge, we thought that it was going to be very easy, that we were going to stop birth control, do our like 3-month break, detox the body kind of thing, and then be pregnant. And that's obviously not what happened by a long stretch. So it was almost a year trying until my family doctor referred me to our first of 3 different fertility clinics. And we did all the basic tests, blood work, etc., semen analysis, and everything came back normal. We were then told to, I think I did some cycle monitoring, told to just keep trying, maybe it's just a time thing. And then nothing happened. We then did 2 IUIs that didn't work. Before we did our funded cycle is when our second doctor realized that AMH hadn't been tested. So we did that and it came very, very low. That's when we were sent to IVF right away. Like there's no reason why we keep doing IUIs. IVF is going to be your solution. We did eventually our funded IVF cycle with the 3 embryos. We did one fresh, 2 frozen, nothing worked. We took a break. And that I always describe as like the first leg of our journey that was very, very dark and full of sadness and depression and a lot of worries and loss of hope and loss of trust, especially for myself. I think whoever's carrying the female body around through this journey has so much pressure, and so much of the physical aspects of the journey just happens to us. And just complete distrust in my body because, again, my perception is that things were going to just happen easily because every female body is able to carry a child because that's what we're made to do biologically and naturally. And so that was very heavy for me. And I'm a Pilates instructor. That's my day job. And I was a dancer before. So I knew my body and I had a lot of contact with my body physically. I knew it very well. I know how to move around the world. And I thought that I knew my body very well. So that was a huge dip for me in complete darkness. And then I realized that I went through a stage there between like this first leg and second leg of our journey where I'm like, this cannot be it. I can't just eat well or try to eat my best and go to the clinic and get pumped with the drugs. It was all so physical, physical, physical. There's a piece I'm missing, is basically what I realized. And then I started going down a bit more the spiritual route, looking for meditation work. And I'm in the Pilates world. I wasn't into yoga as much. So I looked into that a little bit more and just getting to know what I could do to take care of my mental health. And because I realized that part of the puzzle was missing and there was no support that I found at that stage. I'm sure there was support out there. It just wasn't readily available for me. So I went on a big journey to try and really look into the mental health aspect of this for myself. And I found a lot of different tools and started feeling a lot better and created a space where I had the tools and strategies to cope a little bit better. And then I was ready to go back to the clinic. So then it was our third doctor, third clinic, and it worked a lot better. The fit that I found with my current fertility doctor was much better, and it was successful after a bit of a while, but it worked. We did batching of embryos, so that was recommended and it worked really well. A more tailored protocol versus a protocol that was just set in stone, which was my first experience. And would love to hear what you both think about that. And then we did PGT testing on our embryos, froze all of them. And then our baby boy was the third transfer of that part of the journey. So he was number 6 in total, and he is soon to be 3 years old.
Oh, that's quite a journey. So your son was the third PGT tested embryo, but the sixth untested
Yes.
in total, right? Okay.
Exactly. Yes. And meanwhile, you did mention that I'm from the My Fertility Journey podcast. In this kind of healing portion of my journey is where I started working a little bit towards healing myself and trying to open some space for others as well that are in the journey.
You mentioned that you spent quite a bit of time working on your mental health. What did you do? What kind of supports did you find? And what kind of tools did you use to help with the mental health aspect?
I love that because I do feel that for a lot of people, it's a big piece that's missing. I did a lot of different things and I found one that worked most for myself. I did a lot of affirmation, so like positive affirmations, because going back to that distrust in our bodies where we're in such despair. There's a lot of people out there that work with just saying, no, you're worthy and you will be a mother one day, that type of stuff, and whatever affirmations work. That unfortunately wasn't the best tool for myself, just my personality. I just didn't quite believe it. I think it's a fake it till you make it kind of thing. And it didn't quite work for me. But then I did guided meditations. So I used different apps. I can always share on the notes as well, my favorite ones. And ended up with a Zen meditation teacher, which was not catered towards fertility. And I found that ironically or not, is really what worked the best. I think it was a lot because it was just life tools that he shares, and his teachings are just for life. And I think that a lot of the things, the struggles that we go through in fertility journey can be reflected and related to a lot of different things in life, right? I share as well that one other thing that really helped me, it's a little bit sad, but I had a close friend. She's great now. She's well in remission, but she was going through cancer treatment. At the same time, I was going through fertility treatment. And it was so interesting because I knew that her issue was like a life and death situation, and mine wasn't. But I know that in our minds, as soon as a doctor tells you, oh, you won't be able to conceive, or like whatever it is, or this is the only route for you and it may not work, our body tells you that you're not going to survive. Like this
Hmm.
is right. I don't know if it's just me or if it's, yeah.
No, I
And
think it's very universal. Absolutely.
yeah. And we had so much in common to share with each other and how we were navigating this. So that was really amazing, just having someone that's not even from the fertility journey or fertility community to be able to help me that way. And we helped each other really a lot. But these tools that I learned from the teacher was really integral to my overall mental health and well-being overall, and even relationship tools, or the tools I could apply to my relationship with my husband and today with my son. It was very general and so applicable and so practical. So that's really what ended up helping me the most, was the Zen type meditation. If I can say one thing, just as an example, just watching your thoughts. So as we just sit there, and you don't even have to like, oh, now I'm going to sit and meditate. Like it can be as you're driving or as you're sitting in the subway, riding to your fertility clinic or riding to work, or if someone at work just said something that like rubbed you the wrong way, or your significant other, whoever it is, and you can just sit and create a space for yourself for you to hear the mess that goes in our head. I think we all have a mess, right? And these voices in our brain that comes from the background that we've experienced, all the baggage that we have since we were little to now. And it was so interesting to have someone guide me through that process of listening to my thoughts and how we don't need to believe them, and how then getting tools, learning the tools to be able to separate them from our self and how we react to things that happen to us. So that was immensely helpful. So that's kind of a little bit of a short version of all the things that I tried. My advice for people now is to try everything. You never know what's going to be able to help you, but you need to do something for mental health. It's so important, isn't it?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And you're right. There is no one tool fits all. Like there could be so many different things that can be helpful. But what's important is to really face it. I think a lot of people may choose to distract themselves. There's a difference between finding a tool to distract yourself and a tool to help you actually process what you're going through. And distraction can work for a little bit, but in my experience, because I've been there in the long term, it doesn't work in the long term. You really have to sit with it. And whether it is mindfulness or meditation or something else or counseling or coaching, it is about like, how do I take this burden and process it so that I can carry it?
That's so true. I shared one time that, especially through that hard, dark part of my journey, it felt like I was walking around with a backpack full of rocks. It was invisible to other people. They would see me walking down the street. Oh, it's just a person walking with a backpack. It was so heavy. And I did not know how to lessen that load. And that's exactly what you just said. It's learning the tools to deal with the burden is going to be there in one way or another. It's going to feel heavy, but you can't go about your day pretending that backpack is not on your back. Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. I heard this line somewhere and I always thought it was very good. There's no way around it. You just have to go through it, right? To get to the other side, which really summarizes that. And I think to your point that everybody requires or needs something a little bit different, you have to find what works for you. It's actually kind of funny because Dr. Garcia and I, we always joke about this, about how you and I process things so differently, have such different perspectives on how we deal with, things when they don't go well, navigating conflict and everything like that. We're still great friends. But the things that you do would never work for me and vice versa. And so I think it's absolutely true. You have to find what works for you. You have to be open to trying different things. You have to go into things with an open heart, which I think is really the most important, right? About allowing yourself to feel the emotions and allowing yourself to feel like there could maybe potentially be light somewhere, maybe at the end of the tunnel, right? That you're going to allow the process to happen.
I have to say though, having been in the fertility journey at the very beginning, like what was for you your first cycle, when you say the first leg of your journey, your dark years, when I was in the first leg of my journey, the dark years, sometimes it's hard to hear what we're saying right now. So if you're one of our listeners are there who are at the beginning, you might be rolling your eyes right now thinking, oh gosh, one more person who's telling me to meditate so I could get pregnant. I can't take this anymore. That's completely understandable. And I was there, like anybody who told me at that time to relax and meditate and a backpack full of rocks and the pain, it's like, shut up. I just want a baby. That is so relatable and so understandable. But yeah, I see it all the time in patients where at the beginning of the journey, they just don't want to hear any of it, or they feel like they don't need a tool, they need a baby. And if they just get pregnant, everything is going to be fine. But gosh, like you just don't know. Yeah, I can give you a baby tomorrow or not, right? Like it's not under our control. It's not under your control. It's not under my control. We can do all the things, but we just have no idea how the cycle is going to go. So you need the tools. You need the day, the present. You need to deal with what's happening right now, right? And whether you get the baby tomorrow or maybe you never do, or maybe it's in a few years or whatnot, you really do need to love yourself and have compassion with yourself. And the tools doesn't mean that you're weak. It doesn't mean that you can hack it. It doesn't mean that you're not going to keep trying to have your baby. It's just getting you from A to B with your mental health in the best place that it can be, given the circumstances that you're going through.
It's so true. It's different when we hear, oh, if you're in the right place and the right mindset and your body is a nurturing space, you're going to be pregnant. But that's not really what we're saying. That is super annoying. And to this day, I'm like, you doctor gonna say, I'm like, shut up. Just like, you don't know, right? But it is really like having the tools in order to cope. You know what? When you were speaking, it made me think back. Sometimes I like my body, I can feel it back into those years. And it feels like you're just grabbing hold so tight to that like little sliver of hope that you're going to be pregnant tomorrow. It's going to be the next transfer, the next egg retrieval is going to work and whatnot. And you feel like if you just let go of that grip a little bit, you're going to, I don't know what it is, disappear into thin air. Like we feel like that's our lifeline and it doesn't need to be. It's just so hard being in a situation where you don't know. Opening yourself up to, I don't know really if I'm going to be pregnant or not. Because I think that's also a huge misconception that, okay, it didn't work naturally, which was my plan A that everyone told me from the beginning, as soon as I realized I was a girl, that this was going to happen. And now it's IUI or it's IVF. Like it seems like it's a guarantee when it really isn't. So opening yourself up and letting go of that grip a bit is so scary. So scary, but it's less scary when you have the tools. And I guess that's what I realized. I had to go through it really badly where I didn't want to get off of bed. I hope that people that listen to this and how we're sharing, and it's so nice to have all of these different platforms where people can find community and hear and different things and different perspectives and listen to different stories and all the beautiful information that is so amazing that you guys both are putting out there. I hope that people don't go through it as badly. That's all we can hope, right? And I hope that they continue listening.
So I guess in my mind, I'm imagining a patient listening to this podcast who is, as you say, in the depths of despair at this point and is feeling really low. Knowing what you know now and knowing what resources are available now, where should they start? Like really practical, easy steps. Because when you're feeling that way, you're not really capable usually of making big steps, big plans, thinking through things and researching. If somebody's feeling that way right now, what would you say to them? What are things that they can do to start trying to maybe take half a rock out of that backpack, right?
Yeah. I would say I can think of two things that would be, I can't say easy, but like the low hanging fruit. I think social media is a love hate situation. So I'm just going to put that out there. But if you are in social media, I would look for people that you can talk to. So maybe hashtag fertility journey, hashtag fertility support, fertility community, and look for people that chat. I talk on DMs with people all the time. I don't post a lot, but I'm constantly on DMs just chatting with people. And I have people that don't have even a picture on Instagram. Like they're just there to chat. They're not sharing. Sometimes people tell me, I'm telling you this story. Like my mom doesn't know what I'm going through. So if you're that type of person that's not getting a lot of support, doesn't know anyone in your life that is going through this, just try to find someone like a real person that you can talk to and you can tell them details or not. It doesn't really matter. And then the second thing I would say is to write. Write on your own. And that's why I say it's not going to be an easy thing, but everyone has a piece of paper and a pen and you can just sit in the dark with your hot tea or a drink, maybe. Maybe all you need is at this time is a drink. And then as you're doing that, you just write everything that's coming out, everything that you might think you would be judged upon if you shared with a friend that doesn't know. So, like, I didn't go to that baby shower because of this, and that, or I went to this baby shower and it was horrible, and just write everything that comes up. This was me. True story, not an example. I was scared that people would see my bloated belly from IVF and ask if I'm pregnant. That would be the worst situation ever. I am scared that so and so that I know are trying are going to announce soon before I even have my. I'm scared that my cousin is going to announce a second, third baby and I don't even have one. Write all these things out that are just in your mind, and you will realize that, again, your backpack is going to be less heavy and you can crumble that and toss it in the garbage. You don't even need to ever read it again, but just getting it off your mind and off your chest, and realizing all of this is normal. Listen to everyone's stories on podcasts like yours, or listening to Dr. Garcia's episode that I was listening to recently, sharing her story. You realize all these feelings are normal. There are people out there that are feeling exactly the same. You are not a horrible person. I think all of these things that we end up telling ourselves during the journey just weighs, and it's unnecessary. And we have a choice in the end of the day. And I know it's super hard to hear this. I didn't really like hearing this when I was sad because I just wanted to throw a pity party every day. But that doesn't help you get anywhere. It just really makes you a very miserable person. If you realize that these things are normal and they happen to everyone, and you choose to then, I'll stick with the sadness that is really real, like the sadness of you not knowing if you're going to have a baby, throw a pity party for that 100%. Don't throw a pity party because you think the universe is not giving you a baby because you're not worthy, right? I think those are very real things that we tell ourselves. We believe both with the same amount of weight, but they should not have the same amount of weight, because one is very true. You don't know if you're going to have a baby. The other one is
It's
not
not true at all.
at all.
Yes. Yes. And sometimes we believe the things, but we don't even know we believe them. So that's why writing is really good. I'm a big fan of writing, so I'm glad you said that. But I think of it as like when you have a drawer and it's underwear and socks and everything is messy, and then you start taking it all apart and you put it all together, and all of a sudden it's the same stuff in the drawer, but it's clean, it's organized, you know where the underwear is, you know where the socks are. So I think of writing that way. You have all of these things in your head, and it's only until you start writing them down that you can start seeing the threads and the pieces. And that question about being worth it, it's such a common thing. I mean, if you stop somebody in the street going through infertility, hey, do you think that you're worth it or not? They'd be like, of course I am. But really, a lot of people, and I know I was in it, a lot of people really do believe without realizing they believe it, that this is happening because it's their fault, they did something wrong, or that they're just not worth it of being a parent. And that is a painful belief to have. I understand in your journey, Bianca, you also had a loss, right? Are you okay to talk about that?
Absolutely. It's very fresh. It's still ongoing, that part of my journey. So, after all of this that happened to me and all the years that it took for us to have our IVF miracle baby, just over 2 years after we had our baby, I got pregnant spontaneously. That adds so many layers to just the messed up journey that infertility is. So it was very confusing in the beginning. It was mixed emotions. And I say this with a heavy heart. I have to apply so many of those teachings all over again, even though I have a baby and it feels like I've achieved everything that I wanted. But the trauma and the pain is still there. I have a lot of fear of being judged and how I was going to be seen. Like I rehearsed in my brain so many times how I was going to present this on my Instagram account and the podcast because I'm like, this is not my brand. My brand is infertility, and now I have a spontaneous pregnancy. Are people going to want to listen to me? It's so bizarre what our mind tells us. It's not even funny. It was very, very confusing. We had a lot of fears, me and my husband, because also what the fertility journey drills into you is that you have to be perfect. Like goes back to what I was talking about before. Like you have to be eating perfectly and you have to be this perfect nurturing vessel of a person in order to be able to be pregnant and carry a baby. And we weren't planning this. And it happened. I had one cycle after pregnancy. I was breastfeeding a lot. My cycle never started. I had one cycle and then I felt pregnant. Why do we say fell pregnant? I never understood this expression.
You know what? My husband, he always uses that expression. I don't know. I never use it, but he does all the time.
Yeah, I don't
And
know.
it kind of drives me nuts because I didn't trip on a rock and fell pregnant.
I know,
I am the word police, the naming police. No, I know that's a terrible one.
isn't it?
But you're right. I think it actually brings up this whole connotation and it really kind of reinforces that idea. Pregnancy is easy. So we all have to be really careful we don't fall.
Yeah, maybe
Whoops, you're going to get pregnant.
there's
And so I think it really just plays into the psyche of this whole narrative that starts from when we're really young about trying not to get pregnant, working really hard not to get pregnant, that being the ultimate fear, and people not necessarily talking about infertility or the difficulties associated with that. That's really a strong reflection of it. But you're right. There's so many weird ones. Yeah.
yes, yes. So then we were so scared because, again, it's like you have to be perfect in order to carry a healthy pregnancy. And then, unfortunately, the day that I went for the 12-week scan and get the results, our worst fear came to reality, and our little baby had genetic issues. So we decided to terminate the pregnancy, which is again a very, very delicate topic, especially coming from someone that had a lot of trouble to get pregnant in the first place. To then, I never ever thought I would be in this situation. To first of all have a miracle, which is the only word I can describe it with, a spontaneous pregnancy in my situation, and then to have to terminate. And I say that we chose to terminate. Sometimes I say that. In reality, we both feel that it wasn't really a choice. It's just a decision that had to be made. And it just broke my world. It was really, really troubling.
Can only imagine. I'm so sorry.
Thank you. And it's still challenging because I'm still dealing with remaining issues. We had the termination and then there was leftover tissue. I had a hysteroscopy and now I have scar tissue and adhesions. So I need another hysteroscopy to then hopefully get a healthy cycle going, to then hopefully be able to go for baby number 2. So that's really at this moment today is what I'm dealing with. Yeah.
Mhm.
Can I just say, Being a woman sucks.
Can we all agree to that? Yes.
But honestly, like, my God, I'm so sorry you're going through that.
Thank you. I never thought I would be in this situation. I have to say that it is really eye opening when you go through grief like this. It's an experience. It's not one I wish on anyone. I do have a lot of empathy for people. I think it's the same when you realize that you're going to have trouble conceiving one way or another, however, this is playing out in your life. And before you didn't really understand why so and so didn't want to come to the baby shower. Again, true story. I had a friend one time before my whole journey started, where it was a mutual friend. I was organizing the baby shower, and she's like, I'm sorry, I'm not in the mental state to come. I did not understand. I'm like, oh, that's so weird. How are you not supporting our friend? She's this happy stage. I didn't say that to her, but I did think it a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then when my journey started, it went back. It was years later. And I'm like, there you go. Little life lesson right there. So, the loss, it feels the same. It just gives me another layer of pain and suffering and grief to deal with, but also gives me another layer of empathy where I can understand the loss of the vision that you have. It's such a strange thing, right? The grief of someone that you know and that you're going to miss, like a parent or a grandparent. I'm lucky to say I haven't had big losses in my life, especially not losses of younger people. That is so hard. But my grandparents, and then just having that day to day or imagining the future things happen. Like today, I grieve my grandmothers that are not meeting my baby, right? One of them could have met my baby. The other one passed away before we started trying. That's one layer of grief. Now, the grief of being pregnant and imagining, right? Like right now, I would have a big baby bump because I would be just less than 4 weeks away, actually, right now. I do go through things right now that I planned before, right? So when I'm like, oh, whenever this happens, I'm going to be through this stage. Like I mentioned briefly, I'm a Pilates instructor and I teach pre and postnatal workshops. And these workshops are booked way in advance. So in my thinking back, right, I'm like, oh, at that time, I'm going to be teaching a prenatal workshop. I'm actually going to be prenatal. Like, how cool is that going to be? And now I have to teach it with the grief of the loss. Like it's very intense. So if anyone out there is going through it, one thing I will never understand is the strength that people have to have when they go through a loss without having a baby at home. I have no word. I have goosebumps because my baby really saved me. Dr. Wise, going back to what you said, like just being a woman, I think in this stage, everyone is suffering so much, but like having gone through that in your body is just so hard.
I think more than anything, what I'm hearing is that we need to give ourselves grace and we need to give others around us more grace. That even when they are close to us, even when they are close friends, we may not necessarily know all the details. They may not necessarily be sharing everything with us in that moment, which is fine. But we just need to have more grace for ourselves and for others around us.
I've been doing this for over 10 years, and it's just not a moment goes by that I don't feel incredibly humbled to be part of these stories and be part of these journeys. And the strength, I always say my patients are the strongest one out there. I don't care, I'll go head to head with anyone else because the kind of things that they go through in order to achieve their families, and even the ones that don't achieve their family, that's also a strength. Saying, I'm going to walk away from this, I'm going to find a life that doesn't involve the children that I want, that also blows my mind. So, whether you end up with your happy ending or not, just having been in the journey and living it, it just blows me away that we do that and that I get to help people through that. And every journey is different. For some people, they feel secondary infertility can have its own little knife twist in the heart, right? Because you are thinking now, my child is going to be alone. Your child might be asking you for a sibling. My friends from daycare, whatever, all have siblings. I want to have a little sibling. And you have to say, I'm trying it. We can't. So it certainly does add a new layer of complexity Sometimes when you're dealing with secondary infertility, it's not as simple as at least you have a child at home. Every situation is unique and complex on its own.
That's so true. And it makes me think too that this community is full, as you just said, of the strength of people. It is unbelievable. And it's also the people that don't want to be strong. To your point from before, it's like, shut up, I don't want to be strong, but you have to. I don't know from where we pick it up, but it's that will and the hope and the belief. If anyone is listening to this and they either don't feel strong or they're just tired of being strong, we see you. We know
Yeah.
yeah, it's just amazing what people go through.
From what I see, I think a lot of people tell me, I'm too afraid, I'm not strong. And I think everybody is strong, right? Everybody has a strength within them. It's just a question of whether you're being put to the test to do it or not. And it's a question of when it shows, how it shows. And it looks different for everybody. For some people, strength comes in the form of saying, I'm walking away from this. That's incredible strength. For other people, it means IVF number 25 and donor X and surrogacy and a loss and another loss. For other people, it means adoption. It just comes in all kinds of different forms. You might not always feel like you are being strong every second of every day, but when you look back at the journey and all the things that you have accomplished and all the things that you've been through, then you look back and you're like, holy, I was strong, right? Like it was there all along, even when you couldn't see it in the moment.
It's so true. And I feel that when I'm talking to people, I'm like, wow, because we validate each other and we hold space. I'm like, wow, you've been through a crazy amount of things. And I hope you know that. And I hope you're proud of yourself. And then I think back to my journey and I'm like, oh, yeah, I went through all of these things too. And I was telling myself those things too. I don't think I'm so strong. I don't think I'm dealing with this very well. We put ourselves down a lot for sure. But when you see it reflected back at you, you're like, wow, it is a lot. Yeah. And it's nice to give yourself some space and some grace as well when things are not easy.
It sounds like connecting with people by social media and your podcast has really become an important part of how you are also working through some of your emotions. Tell us about the podcast. How did that come to be? Tell us more.
Yeah. The podcast, I had the idea pre pandemic, but as soon as the pandemic hit, I'm like, oh, we're all at home. We're all getting used to talking over online platforms, etc. And my idea, because I was still in the thick of it, was to share stories of people that did not have their dream baby or wherever they were on their journey that they had what they wanted in the first place. So I speak mostly on my podcast to date is to people that are still or were still at that time in the thick of it. I am so happy to share that most of them have had healthy pregnancies and have healthy babies now. I felt the need in this world of listening to podcasts and sharing stories of people that did not have what they really wanted yet. Because everywhere I was listening were people that just wrote a book about having a baby after 8 years or whatever it was. And I wasn't ready to hear those stories. So I want to open space for people that are in the thick of it. So that's what I did. And it's called My Fertility Journey Podcast because I'm also talking to people that were part of my journey in a different way, not exactly infertility. So I talked to someone that's an advocate for clean beauty, talking about products that are clean, spiritual coaches that are not necessarily working with just fertility, things that came across my path that really helped me. And I talk to either professionals or patients that share experiences like that as well to help people that are still in the thick of it. I then, of course, got pregnant. And I feel like I did took up a hiatus there and I haven't had a lot of new episodes lately, but I do feel like I want to go back to that. I love talking to people. I don't know if it shows in this conversation, but I love sharing and
Where
I
you're
love
very good at it. Yeah.
thank you. And yeah, I do love opening space for people to share. And it's very cathartic as well. during the journey. Like it was for me and on my Instagram account, because I have those two hand in hand. So before IVF worked for us, I was sharing a bunch and it was so healing for me. And I know that people feel that connection as well because people share, oh, I read this and I can really relate and it's really helped me. And people that are not ready to share or maybe will never share in detail their stories, but it helps support them when they read or they listen to things of people that are in the same level of whatever we want to call it, the pain, the suffering, the dark years. I feel that it's nice for people to know like it's not all rosy when, oh, now I have my baby. So here is my story. So at some point soon, I'm going to start sharing more of people that are in the thick of it. So that was really how it was born, the podcast. Yeah.
That's amazing. I think there is so much power in sharing. I didn't when I was going through my journey. I didn't know Instagram was a thing, and I was too ashamed to share, especially being a fertility specialist. I felt that it would be proof that I didn't know what I was doing. Like, again, it sounds silly now because there's tons of fertility specialists that have had to go through IVF, and it obviously has nothing to do with my work as a fertility specialist. But going back to the thoughts that we have that we didn't even know we have, that's exactly what was going through my mind, even though I didn't realize it. I did share like after the fact, and there is power, even though everything is done. When people go through IVF, and you can probably talk to this, having a baby doesn't mean it's all over. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden you give birth, your fertility journey is erased, you're now happy, rainbows and daisies every day, all day. There is a lot that needs to heal, even after you've got everything you wanted. And I still get triggered sometimes. I still get flashbacks. I still see, like you were saying, see children who are today 10 years old, 9 years old, 8 years old that would have been the same age of the children that I lost, of the cycles that I didn't have. When, friends that I said, oh, we're going to be pregnant together and we're wearing. And now I'm in touch with those, those friends of the children and I've seen them grow up. So I still sometimes get those things. And sharing has really helped me with healing, even though it's after the fact. And you're right, not everybody needs to share, but sometimes even doing it anonymously, like with an account without your name or any information, can be really helpful because the feeling of being alone when you go through this journey is it's real and it's intense and you can really feel like you're the only person in the world who is going through this.
And sharing can take so many different forms, right? Social media, reaching out to talk, but it can also be sharing even with a professional, with a counselor, right? Doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go out and post on social media like I am doing IVF, or that you have to go and join Instagram when you're not even into social media to start with. It can be as simple as talking to friends, letting them know what's going on, giving them a glimpse into your life, talking to partner, talking to family members, talking to professional, all the things that, as you said, that you would never say to your partner, things that you're too embarrassed to say to other family members, you can do that to them. And that can be really helpful. Then you can close that session or end that session, walk out of that session, and then potentially feel a little bit of some of those rocks being removed from the backpack, right? So there's so many different forms that it can take.
Yes. And I find nowadays there's so many more options. I find that when I was in need of that, I feel like a lot of clinics had that support, like support groups or just a counselor that they would recommend that was more fertility related, but it wasn't there. Like it wasn't on the posters everywhere in the clinic. And now I find that that is the case. And it makes me very happy that the professionals are showing more there is support for mental health out there for the patients. There was a support group in my clinic once every other week, I think. And I did do a couple of private therapy sessions with her too. It was so helpful. That was the first thing actually that I did for my mental health and the journey. Yeah.
So, Bianca, you've had an incredibly long and painful journey. And like you said, it's giving you a lot of empathy for others in the journey and a lot of understanding of the different layers and the complexity of what it's like being in it. Can you give us some parting thoughts, some parting words for people who are in the thick of it right now, where you were and what you call the first leg of your journey, the dark, dark, dark days?
Yeah. I might repeat myself a bit, but I do find that nowadays it's the piece I find that is really missing is for people to look into their mental health. And it's not like, oh, when you're fine up in your mind, well, first of all, you're never going to be completely fine. But when you're better in your mind, then pregnancy is just going to happen. It's not true, but you're going to be able to carry yourself with so much more ease through the journey and deal with the hardships without feeling like you're going into complete despair, which is what I went through. And like we said, there are so many tools and so many strategies that people can learn. Don't stick with only fertility based things. Look and be open minded, like Dr. Wise mentioned. You'd never know what's going to be helping you. So I think that would be the biggest thing. One thing that I've been finding lately for myself, and I also wish that I could have gone into that a little bit more, is joining a bit of movement and mindset together. So this is where I'm leaning towards nowadays the most. There are so many people that you can talk to. And like we said, the sharing, I think those would be the biggest things, because really everything else is not easy, but eating well and having a cleaner lifestyle, like all of those things, we're just hitting on the same thing. It's not,
Mhm.
if anything, it's just bringing people more stress and anxiety.
Yeah.
The
Right.
other day, yeah, I was sitting with someone that's in the thick of it, and she was eating a little piece of cake, and she's like, "Oh, I don't think I should be doing this right now because I'm going into a procedure next week." And I'm like, "No, like this is exactly what you need. Just like stuff your face with that chocolate cake. It's gonna be amazing. Like freely enjoy it." So I think that's also something, like we take it to an extreme that is also not very healthy mentally. But yeah, I think that those would be the two pieces: the movement, the mental health, the sharing. Unload that backpack.
Yeah.
My final words.
That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Thank you so much, Bianca, for sharing your journey with us. I know it must have been incredibly difficult to share that publicly, but we appreciate it so much. It's very genuine. And I can see why you have so much empathy and care for the fertility community.
Thank you for
Yeah.
having me. It's such a pleasure to sit with both of you.
Thank you so much for joining us. And we're both wishing you all the best as you're moving forward, as you're kind of going through your next steps. We're sending you lots of love, warm hugs, and good fertility thoughts.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap for today, Superhumans.
If you're looking to connect, get social with us. Follow us on YouTube and Instagram at My Fertility Podcast, or visit us online at myconfertility.com. And don't forget, follow, subscribe, and share your favorite episode.
Thanks for listening to My Fertility Podcast and for being a vital part of our community. We know you've got this.
We're signing off until next Tuesday.
If you found this episode of My Fertility Podcast helpful, please take a moment to head over to the review section and leave us your thoughts. Your reviews and comments are incredibly valuable to us and help guide future episodes. We also welcome you to direct your questions to info@myfertilitypodcast.com.
My Fertility Podcast is produced by Rabbit Media Inc. in conjunction with Dr. Garcia and Dr. Weiss. Music from Mix Kit Raising Me Higher by Ajay Stelino. My Fertility Podcast is not intended to replace any type or variation thereof professional medical, health, or legal advice, nor should the content be taken as medical advice. Please contact your primary healthcare professional regarding any medical questions you may have. The information presented in this podcast is based on the knowledge and understanding of the host at the time of recording. Medical knowledge is constantly evolving, and new research may change the understanding of health-related topics. While we strive to provide accurate and up-to-date information, we do not guarantee the completeness, accuracy, or timeliness of the content. The views expressed in this podcast by guests are not those of the host or the management. This podcast is not intended to impose any type of discrimination. My Fertility Podcast and its management are not responsible for any losses, damages, or liabilities that may arise from the use of this podcast.